Blog Talk Radio.
I saw a cloud today. I watched it change its shape into a dinosaur, a whale, a tornado.
Indeed. Must be in the right state of mind to bring about this evolution of consciousness and awareness that we're here to do here at the Universal Truth Evolution on blogtalkradio.com. And today we have a very, very intriguing subject. It has to do with just Earth energies, really, one can say, having to do with crystal skulls. And we have an authority on the subject, shall we say, who's been utilizing crystal skulls in many varieties of ways, as well as studying and all kinds of them, traveling with and everything with these crystal skulls. And I can imagine there's been quite a few, quite numerous experiences that coincided with these skulls and the energies they bring and some of the experiences too. So our guest here actually today is Joshua Shapiro. He is an author of a couple of books on the subject. And I'd like to go ahead and welcome Joshua on right now. How's it going there, Joshua?
Going very good, Jerry. Thank you very much for having me on your show today.
Oh yeah, I am. I'm excited to talk about the subject. It's crystals in general are very dear to me. I kind of mentioned before the show started, I do work with them and making all kinds of art and jewelry with them, and so these pieces of art really are amazing, and I can't wait to get into a little more of your experience with them.
Certainly. Where would you like to start?
How about your story about what really drew you towards the subject of crystal skulls in general?
Okay, well, probably like most of your listeners, we each have our own story, how we got involved with the paranormal and the spiritual, and each person's story is unique and different. In my case, I wasn't intending, as I became interested in these areas, to be involved with crystal skulls. It just came across my path. And basically my story starts in 1983 in San Jose, California. I was visiting a friend who was selling a copy of the first book that I wrote, which was called Journeys of an Aquarian Age Networker, which was my attempt to try to share about experiences and information I had collected traveling on faith for several years, like in the late 70s and early 80s. And so all I did is I just kind of stopped at her bookstore and was just visiting, and she took out some pictures of a crystal skull, which I had never seen before. This one was made out of amethyst quartz crystal. And just so we can make clear what I'm going to be talking about, in the days when I started working with crystal skulls in the 80s, crystal skulls meant quartz crystal skulls. However, here we are now almost 30 years later, and there are people who are carving skulls from all different types of gemstones, and now collectively they're calling all of them crystal skulls. The ones which I resonate with in a personal way is the quartz ones, and so those are the ones that I'm going to be focusing on, but that's not to take away at all from the value and the assistance that the other type of gemstones also are giving to people, that are also made into the shape of a human bone skull. So anyway, going back to 1983, my friend, when I was visiting her bookstore, took out a picture of this amethyst crystal skull, and I had a very powerful reaction just to the picture. First of all, I felt an inner earthquake. Well, that's what I call it because I don't know what else to say. A very strong vibration shaking inside of me just looking at the picture. And then I heard a voice say, and this is the way that it works for me when I get communication from spirit or these intelligences which are around us or dimensional beings, I hear it in my thinking voice. It's the same thing when I read a book. I hear the words in my thinking voice. So this is the way that it works for me. So in my thinking voice, not I'm thinking, but in the thinking voice, I hear something say, what is this doing out now? Which, upon thinking about it sometime later, it meant that there was a part of me that understood what crystal skulls was about, and possibly in another lifetime probably had a connection with the one that I was looking at a picture of. But of course, at that moment, I didn't understand any of this. I just felt this powerful response to the photograph. And then about a half an hour later, there was a real earthquake in Calingus, California, which is probably about 50 to 100 miles south of San Jose. And the picture that was sitting on the table, was rattling and shaking. So essentially what I had in that moment was an outer and inner earthquake. Now, one of the things that I know, and especially now in these days is very important, is people are going to have special moments where they're going to have things happen to them that are spontaneous, are unbelievable, and they happen quickly. And usually what it is, it's an awakening and an opportunity for the person to make a choice, to make a decision in their life.
Very true.
I believe that, right. So I think what happened is in this moment I was needing to make a decision, and what I was feeling looking at the picture of this crystal skull was that these were vital and important for the future of humanity. And because I felt that, I thought, well, there must be some role I'm supposed to play, so I better, be open to it. And the next thing I know, a couple of weeks later, I'm invited to see this crystal skull, which not very many people have been able to see, by the way. There are other crystal skulls which are traveling, like Max or the Mitchell-Hedges skull or Synergy or some in museums, which a lot of people are now being able to see. But this particular one has still not been seen by many people. So when I was invited to go see the crystal skull, the way that things work for me is about experiences. I have experiences and an understanding, or, something comes from the experience. And I think, when somebody has an opportunity to experience something new, rather than just go by, the experiences of others or opinions of others, you should jump in and have your own experience so you know what you're dealing with. So, of course, I accepted, and I had a chance to see the skull. Now, what was happening with this crystal skull at this time is there was a group of businessmen who had the skull, and there was some wealthy guy in town that was around, and so it was held in an art gallery, so that's where I went to see it, and of course this gentleman went to see it, so that was the reason why I was there. Apparently what happened was there was a Mayan priest who claimed he needed money for the people of his poor village, and he made available to this business group not only the crystal skull but some other Mexican artifacts and etc., which he received money, and part of the money he received was a loan, like collateral, against these artifacts, that if he repaid the loan, then he would get the artifacts back. In the case of this amethyst skull, which now has the name of Ami, which means friend, the Mayan priest never paid the loan back, so the skull stayed with the business group. And essentially, in 1985, they claimed the skull for themselves with an attorney assisting them, held the skull for 14 years, and then in 1999, they started to announce that it was available for sale, and they actually sold it in 2009. So anyway, this was my beginning into the crystal skulls, and I just knew there was something important about them. But I still had no clue at that early stage, what would I be getting into, that I'd be traveling all over the world, that I'd be seeing all kinds of crystal skulls and all the people that I'd be meeting, and the conferences and the books and private sessions and all the stuff that we do now. I didn't have any idea. I just kind of went with my gut feeling that they were important, and this is where it's taken me like 28 years later.
Very cool. Very interesting, actually. So I know you've had experience with, how you're saying, with all these very rare specimens and such. Is there any in particular that you say really kind of resonated with you as being very powerful?
Well, I think all the crystal skulls have special gifts. I don't like to use the word powerful, because powerful implies that one is better than another. And I'll give you an example of this and try to explain it for your listeners. There are 3 different types of crystal skulls which are discussed within the crystal skull community. There are new ones that are being made now by modern carvers, and they seem to be coming predominantly, although this is not only from these 2 places, but China and Brazil. There's a lot of carvers making them. If anybody goes on the internet and goes on eBay and looks up crystal skull, you'll see there are hundreds that are available for sale. Now, when I started in 1983, this situation really didn't exist. It didn't start happening for the new skulls really breaking open until the middle part of the 1990s. Then we have what are called old crystal skulls, which are ones that were made over 100 years, and then different people have different ideas if it's up to 1,000 or 2,000, something like that. And then finally, which I feel this crystal skull I've mentioned so far, is what's called an ancient skull, ancient being, say, over 2,000 years, and older with no idea how far back in the past are we going to go, because, quite frankly, we don't have a scientific way to date quartz crystal. It's an inorganic substance. Normally what archaeologists will do is they'll look at different artifacts, and if they have an organic part to it, they'll use carbon-14 dating, and they'll come up with some kind of idea. So all they can do is say, let's say they go to a Mayan ruin, and they date it to be, 1,000 years ago or whatever, and crystal skulls are there. Well, all we know is that those people had the crystal skulls, but we don't know if they made them or not, because in talking with some of the Mayan people who are following the traditional ways, their elders or shamans, they say that they did not create some of these crystal skulls, that they were brought to them. And they talk about, the possibility of extraterrestrials being connected to them, or beings from the Hollow Earth, or that they came from advanced civilizations in the past. So with the ancient skulls, it's, very difficult. Like, for example, supposedly tomorrow we're supposed to be interviewed by the History Channel of Canada, and they also wanted to interview a person who has an ancient crystal skull that came from Mexico. So what I had to try to do is to explain to them that almost all the people who have so-called ancient skulls, there's no way to prove their origin, that they came from Mexico, they were found in Mexico, they were made in Mexico. There's no way to know that. So anyway, these are the three different types of crystal skulls that exist. And I would say, for myself, what was, let's not use the word most powerful, let's say the most remarkable experience with a specific skull. And the listener also has to understand that although I may feel a strong affinity with this crystal skull, not everybody's going to feel a strong affinity with the crystal skull I'm going to talk about, although many do, and it's probably the most famous. And when the new guardian who took over for this skull started to travel, it's like people just wanted to see it everywhere. So it is considered to be, a very remarkable skull. So the one I'm going to talk about with an experience is called the Mitchell-Hedges crystal skull. And let me give a little background on that, although many people do know its story. Okay, so there was this explorer in the 1920s, F.A. Mitchell-Hedges from England, and he was looking for evidence of lost Atlantis. And he was drawn to go into the areas where the Mayans were. Especially, he went into what was then called British Honduras, which is now known as Belize. So what he did is he got permission from the British government, because this was a colony of England at this time. Now we're talking about in 1923. And he created an expedition to go there, and he made a promise to the British government that any artifacts that he found would either go to the American Indian Museum in New York City or would go to the British Museum in London. So making that agreement, he set off. He had a couple people joining him, and at the end of 1923, his adopted daughter, Anna Mitchell-Hedges, joined him for the expedition. So the story goes on Anna Mitchell-Hedges' 17th birthday, which would be January 1st of 1924. She decides to disobey her father and climbs up the tallest pyramid there, which has damage on it. The city that they eventually found was called Lubantum, which means City of Fallen Stones, and it was totally covered by vegetation when they found it, and they had to burn the vegetation to see, and it was a huge city, with pyramids and all kinds of structures and everything, but there was damage to the buildings. So the largest pyramid had damage, but she decided she wanted to climb to the top to see the full view of the city, and so she did it against her father's wishes, and on her way coming down, the sunlight was reflecting through a hole in the pyramid, and something was coming back at her. So when she climbed down, she told her father, there's something magical there, and her father said, no, it's a piece of glass, but she kept insisting. So he got the local Mayan natives together. They lifted the heavy stone, and then they created the hole. She was only 17, so she was quite thin, lowered her inside. She went to where the light was being reflected, put it into her sweater to protect it, brought it out, and the top part of this crystal skull came out. This crystal skull is two pieces. The lower jaw is separate from the top part. It's a clear quartz skull. So it's one of the few of what we would call older ancient crystal skulls that was created fully duplicating a human bone skull and having these two pieces. Many crystal skulls that are found come in a single piece, including many crystal skulls that are being made by modern carvers. However, there are some carvers who are very skilled using diamond-tipped tools that are making duplicates of the old skull. The example of that would be is the last interview that I did with on January 29th in San Francisco. This will be for a new program, which I'm told I can, let people know it's going to be coming out. It'll have some title called The Truth About the Crystal Skulls by National Geographic. And what the director did is he sent the measurements, the exact measurements of the Mitchell-Hedges skull to Chinese carvers. And so when I came into the room for the interview, I saw this crystal skull on the table sitting, waiting, And I thought, wow, that looks a lot like the Mitchell-Hedges skull, which I've had the pleasure to see a few times. And so I had the opportunity to see it. So what I'm saying is the modern carvers, with this advanced technology that we have now, could duplicate in form some of these older crystal skulls, but not the energy. And there were two aspects of the Mitchell-Hedges skull which they did not duplicate. One was on, I don't know how I can describe it, on the side where the jawbone is, there's kind of like a space, so it's kind of like a handle. You can grab it like a handle. And I didn't see that in this skull. And the other thing is that when I looked, and I'm going to talk about this experience I had with this skull, that's why I'm giving all this preliminary information, so your listeners can follow exactly what I'm going to say next. Fortunately, I'm an author and a speaker, so I can think logically, for your listeners, to make sure everybody's understanding where I'm going with this. So anyway, when I was with the real Mitchell-Hedges skull, and I looked at it from the top, like standing above it, it looked like the top of the head was much larger. And the reason for this is because however this was made, and even the researchers at Hewlett-Packard, which had this skull in the early 70s, they talked about it. They said there are prisms and lenses inside of this skull, which they had no idea how they got there because, working with quartz crystal, it doesn't work this way.
No.
So when I'm looking at the top of the Mitchell-Hedges skull, it's like it's being amplified and it's much larger. But when I looked at the top of this reproduced skull, again, it didn't have that same effect. So just because a carver makes, let's say, the form of one of the ancient skulls, it doesn't immediately imply that it's going to take on its abilities and properties. There's a process of activation, which is the same thing that's happening now with these new skulls. As they're coming to people who have a very strong affinity or may have had past lives working with crystal skulls, as these individuals start working with the new skulls, they start coming alive. So this might be something we may want to talk about after I talk about this experience. Okay, so
definitely.
Now your listeners understand there's one called the Mitchell-Hedges skull, was found in 1924. It's human-sized, almost an exact duplicate of a human bone skull, two pieces, lower jaw is separate from the top part. Okay, so I had an opportunity in 2008 to visit with the new guardian. The prior guardian was Anna Mitchell-Hedges, who took the skull when her father passed away in 1959. And then Anna Mitchell-Hedges passed away in 2007 after she had just turned 100 years old. And her friend that she was staying with, Bill Holman, became the new guardian. So Bill was invited, as I was invited, to be interviewed for the Sci-Fi Channel program, which came out in May of 2008. I don't know if it came out before or slightly after the Indiana Jones film came out, but it was released in May. They did a 2-hour interview, and they interviewed me for an hour, but unfortunately none of my interview was shown. Their primary interest was focusing on Mr. Holman, taking him back to Belize, following some notes and information that Anna Mitchell-Hedges had to try to find another crystal skull, which they never found. So that was a little bit disappointing, but there was a lot of good information that the Sci-Fi Channel did put out, and so, I'm always grateful to all the people who are doing something about crystal skulls, because each one lets more people know about these very special objects. And as you said in your beginning, not everyone has had an opportunity to really meet them or experience them. So, but more and more people are as it's coming out. So anyway, I went to Bill Holman's house after we had this interview, and he gave me permission to have a private session with the crystal skull, which I had never had before. I mean, I'd seen the skull before at conferences and things like that, but I had never had been given the ability to just kind of like sit with it privately. So this is what he granted me to do.
Very cool.
So let me try to set up for you what was going on so the listeners can understand this experience.
Mm-hmm.
So what I had with me is I had 3 of my personal crystal skulls. Now, these are all skulls made by modern carvers.
Mm-hmm.
However, I believe, and I am proponent, that if you work with your crystal skulls and you take them to sacred sites and you do healing sessions and meditations for world peace and you let them meet their older brothers and sisters and other things that come to people, which people are using them for, they become alive. They may not be able to duplicate completely the type of phenomenon that their older brothers and sisters are doing, but what the older skulls will do is they will pass gifts to the newer ones. And I'll have to give you an example of that after I go into this experience. So anyway, I had 3 new skulls. Portal de Luz, which is a 10-pound smoky quartz skull that was made by a Brazilian carver. Geronimo Golden Eagle Eye, which is about a 2 to 3 pound smoky quartz skull. And Little Indian Princess, about a 1 pound rose quartz skull. All 3 of these skulls were made by the same carver in Brazil. So I brought these skulls with me. First of all, I'm bringing them with me because I know that after I leave that room, none of those skulls are going to be the same. They're going to receive some energy from the session I have, and they're going to receive some special energy from the Mitchell-Hedges skull, because I believe the crystal skulls are kind of like an internet. They talk to each other. They work together. And what happens is they know that, like some of the older skulls know, they can't be everywhere. So if they can pass part of their essence to their younger brothers and sisters, that means that when we're traveling, other people can experience some aspect of what the Mitchell-Hedges skull is about through our skulls. Because, well, this is if your listeners believe this. You know, I'm just kind of going into my flow here.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, but once the crystal skull becomes activated, the way that we're experiencing it, and it's not just us, we're getting emails from people, we're meeting people as we're traveling, etc. It's the same phenomenon. The skull is kind of like awakened, and it becomes like a person, or it becomes like an intelligence that's having a communication with its owner, guardian, or caretaker, whatever term the person wants to use that has the crystal skull. And we'll have to go into a little more detail about that kind of communication. This blew the director of the National Geographic interview away. He had never heard this before, that, you know, crystal skulls are speaking to people and that they're awakening and having these intelligences. But this is what's going on. So what happens is when I'm there, and this is in Indiana, in the home of Bill Holman, I have the 3 skulls, my MP3 players with me. The MP3 player is with me because the most powerful meditations that I have ever had is when I'm meditating with these crystal skulls and I'm playing, you know, specific music that resonates with me. Everybody has songs that when you listen to it, it makes you happy, it makes you want to dance, makes you want to move, delights you, touches you on a deep level. So when you have an MP3 player, you can put all your songs on there that you like, and just the songs you like. And plus, you can switch very quickly, and that was really important. So what happened is we have the Mitchell-Hedges skull sitting on Anna Mitchell-Hedges' coffee table. It's on a Lazy Susan. I'm forbidden to touch it. I can move the skull by the Lazy Susan, but I can't touch the skull. So what I do is I position the skull directly in front of me on its side. I put Portal de Luz, which is, as I said, 10 pounds, so that's almost human size, smaller than Mitchell-Hedges' skull, facing it. And I put the 2 smaller skulls behind it, so I'm literally creating a pyramid or a triangle with my skulls around the Mitchell-Hedges skull. And then what I do is I'm kind of like in a meditative pose on the ground in front of the table because it's a low table, and I'm changing the songs, and it's almost like I know which song I need to listen to. This is the gift that I have when we do our private sessions. I feel energy. So I can feel, and I know the music ahead. I know I've been a musician before because if I think of a song, I hear the song inside of me. So as soon as I look at the name, I know what that song is.
Mm-hmm.
So I start flipping through the music and the songs. Now, what happened to me in this session, which was only 20 minutes, but it felt longer, is I felt absolute calm and peace. You know, like once I got into it after the first minute or two, I was just absolutely peaceful and calm, as if I was in heaven. There was nothing on any level, in any form during that time that was bothering me. I was just totally at peace. I wasn't worried about anything going on in my life or any challenges I had, whatever. I was just very peaceful and calm.
Very cool.
The next part of it, which I don't know if I can explain it or not. I mean, sometimes people have experiences and we don't have words to fully describe our experience, but I'll do my best, is I sense, see, I'm facing the Mitchell-Hedges skull, so to my right and above the skull, kind of like floating in the air, I sense that there is a presence. Now, normally, when I work with the different crystal skulls, they usually have an intelligence or a living intelligence, but it seems like you're dealing with one person. Like I'm talking to you. You're one individual. Okay, I recognize there are other people who may be listening to this interview now or may listen to the recording later. But right now I'm talking with you, so it's one-to-one. A lot of times when you work with crystal skulls, that's usually what happens. It's a one-to-one kind of communication. But whatever this presence was, it was not a single intelligence. It was like a universal intelligence. It was like some, I don't know how to say it, like some knowledge that's universal, some intelligence that's universal, that spans more than a single person or a single being. That's what was in the room with me. And it seemed to know everything about me. And I'm assuming that this experience was some type of, I don't know, not transformation, like an initiation or something. And I'll explain why I think that, because I noticed some changes in me. But I think that this experience was not finished, because after I went through this and, I felt wonderful and good, and, I was very thankful to Mr. Holman for having it. About 4 months later, I flew with him on a plane to go to Italy for a conference there, because we both needed to fly out of Chicago. That's the area I was in. And then another strange sequence of events started to happen. So, of course, when we got there, the people who are our sponsors and our hosts, they wanted to see the crystal skull first before everybody came for the conference, and Mr. Holman obliged them. So in the home, one of their homes, he started taking the skull out. And then the reverse thing happened to me. Whereas in the first experience I was elated and peaceful and happy and all that, now I started to become ill and sick. And in 2 days I had to do a lecture, and I started to have a sore throat, and then the next day I had a fever. And I couldn't participate fully in all the things going on because I was getting ill. And when the conference came, these people had paid money for me to come to Italy. I said, nothing's going to stop me. I'm going to do my 1-hour presentation. So they left me in bed until maybe 30 or 40 minutes before I was going to talk, and they came to the hotel and picked me up. And then I had enough energy that I could do my 1-hour presentation, and then literally my head fell on the table, and I just lost consciousness. And Mitchell-Hedges skull, as well as the other crystal skulls that were there, they were all sitting in front of me on the table there. And, of course, because of this, they were concerned about me, so they did not send me back when I was supposed to go, and I had to stay 4 extra days. But what happened is, the next to the last day that I was there, I woke up one morning, and then I knew how I was supposed to organize a series of world peace meditations with the crystal skulls that I had discussed with Uri Geller, which perhaps some of your listeners may know him as, the spoon bender, the Israeli scientist who was quite well known. So I had I met him when I was in London one time to see the British Museum crystal skull. He allowed us to visit with him for half an hour, and I interviewed him. Actually held my skull portal de luz during the entire interview. And then he invited me to be on his radio show. And there were two things that I remember from the radio show. First of all, he said, okay, fine, these crystal skulls are powerful and they're helping people, but how could we use them for world peace? And so that's when I got this idea. Well, what if we just invited all these people who are guardians of crystal skulls to all meditate together for peace? Maybe that could do something. But that was back in 2001, and I couldn't figure out how am I going to do this, meditation and get everyone to go in for this. And then when I woke up one morning in Italy after seeing the Mitchell-Hedges go and having this fever and everything, then I was given specific dates in 2009 to start conducting the interviews based around the number 13. So we set up 13 meditations in 2009 and 13 meditations in 2010. And then we did the last one on January 1st of this year. So we had people from all over the world participating. We didn't get as many people as I would hope because, to me the crystal skulls are about peace and working together and cooperation. But, unfortunately, I still don't know how many people did we have participate, but we did hear from people who expressed gratitude, that we went ahead and did this. So there were two things that I noticed that seemed to be a little bit different after these two experiences in 2008. Number one, my energy seemed to be higher. And what I mean by that is, whereas before then, sometimes you walk into these Walmarts and you go into big cities like New York, and the energy is just really crazy and you feel zapped and so forth. I didn't feel zapped anymore. And the other thing I noticed was that it seemed like my heart chakra was much more open. I felt a lot more joy and love and peace, and I'm pretty much in this moment of time, I try my very best just to allow people to be who they are, not to judge them, not to tell them what they have to do, but just let them be who they are, because life's going to teach us things anyway. So I think all of that transformation and changes occurred through these two major experiences with the Mitchell-Hedges skull. Now, since 2008, I have not seen that crystal skull, but I have seen other ones that I haven't seen before. So, and that just continues. I mean, you have to understand this. In 1983, when I first started, we were only talking about the crystal skull in the British Museum. There's another one in a museum in Paris by the Eiffel Tower, and the Mitchell-Hedges skull. And then the co-author of my first book, Mystery of the Crystal Skulls Revealed, F.A. Nick Nasserino, had seen a couple of other skulls, but there weren't that many in 1983. There were very few. Now, here we are in 2011. We have thousands of crystal skulls that are being carved by modern carvers. We have people kicking the ground in Mexico and crystal skulls are popping out. We have a whole new type of crystal skulls coming out of Mongolia and China, which either are a different type of quartz crystal or they're made of these other gemstones, and they have a completely different form than the skulls we're finding, let's say, that have come out of Central America and Mexico. And it's just increasing astronomically. So whereas, let's say, back in the 80s we could kind of know what was going on, it's been exploding. And it's been exploding even before the Indiana Jones film came out.
Yeah.
So anyway, that would be my experience that was the most remarkable. After seeing who knows how many hundreds and hundreds of crystal skulls, that's the one that I think changed me the most and helped me to understand them.
Yeah, that's definitely an intriguing skull, the Mitchell-Hedges skull, and that's really interesting for me to hear about that prismatic and a little more about the prismatic and lensing effect of that skull too. Because working with quartz, I think a lot of people don't realize that quartz is a very hard stone. It's not that easy to carve into. So, which is what makes how would ancients pull this off? Like when we use diamond tip drill bits and stuff like that to shape these things. So it's interesting about that lensing effect. But there was a question in the chat room that was a good one that I was wondering your take on was, do you feel that the skulls themselves have the consciousness, or do you think it's sort of a sentience or intelligence working through it, or do you think it could be both, maybe?
I think it's both. I'll tell you what Portal de Luz told me, because I had a conversation with him. He took me through his creation. He said, first, what happens is the consciousness of the quartz decides it wants to come out of the ground and be of service. Then it's drawn to a carver, and it communicates with the carver, because I asked the carver, Portal de Luz, how do you decide what you're going to create? And he says the stone talks to him and tells him. So I'm thinking that first the stone is giving permission to come out of the ground and to be created in some form. In this case, it would be a crystal skull. Now, when I received Portal de Luz, it was at a conference in Sedona, Arizona in 1999. I had the privilege to work with a woman named Carol Wilson Davies, who's a trance medium, and she is the channel for a book called The Skull Speaks, which happened when she was in the presence of the Mitchell-Hedges skull when it used to be near Toronto, Canada. She had an opportunity to work with Portal de Luz after I had received him as a gift. And she said this crystal skull knew it was going to come to you even before it was put into its shape, as if it was, already divinely intentioned. Now, what was really strange at this point when I received this crystal skull is that I was going to Peru, and I wanted to bring a crystal skull with me because I was looking for a crystal skull in Peru. In prior visits, I'd had a vision of one. That's a whole other story. Okay, so I thought, if I'm looking for one, I should bring one with me. And I thought, well, I'm going to be in high altitude. I'd be crazy to bring a big skull, so I should get one 2 or 3 pounds. But the one that was presented to me as a gift, Portal de Luz, was 10 pounds. So some people might say, well, then how were you able, to move around with it? The skull made itself lighter for me. It was like I would put it on my back and just be able to walk with it or take it on a horse or whatever. But anyway, going to the next stage of this. So the crystal comes out of the ground, talks to the carver, and knows who is going to be its guardian eventually. Now, I believe that when the skull meets the guardian, then it goes to the next level. It's like a door opens. And I think what happens is that the skull and the guardian start to work together as one person, one being, if you will, because the skull will start to take on aspects of its guardian. There are certain things that Portal de Luz does, which is like me. I mean, it's part of my personality. I also think, too, that the reason why Portal de Luz has become very activated is because, number one, I'm very connected with crystal skulls. There's no doubt I've worked with them in past lives. I've had visions in my mind of it. But the other key is that I try to listen to what the skull is asking for, and this is very important. If somebody is a guardian listening or wants to become a guardian of a crystal skull, you have to create a communication with the crystal skull, and it will start to make requests. And these requests is what helps it to become activated and more fully alive. Now, quartz crystal by itself is a transmitter and receiver of various vibrational frequencies. So I would think that once the crystal is put in the shape of a bone skull, that it's going to become, in a way, like a door for different spirits or dimensional beings to work through. Now, we've never been able to really understand this process. In other words, there's no doubt there is an intelligence speaking through the skull. It's happening to both my partner Katrina and I, to many other people. These people are having a relationship with their crystal skull. We even go so far to call our skulls our crystal children because we acknowledge that they are evolving. One of the signs that the crystal skulls are evolving is they change internally. Like, for example, Portal de Luz, when I first received them, he was kind of more of a darky, small. I can't speak.
It's okay.
smoky quartz crystal, and he didn't have so many cracks and things inside of him, and now it's like he's got all kinds of stuff going on inside of him. Geronimo golden eagle eye, which I also received as a gift. Darker smoky quartz crystal, but more clear. It's got things appearing inside of it that I don't remember how these things appeared. So these physical evidence is proof that the skull is going through its own evolution. But probably what I would say is that the intelligence that's speaking is coming from two places, and this is just, intuitive insight. It's either some kind of spirit or dimensional beings that understands the essence of who the guardian is, and if they have a spiritual work or mission for the planet, so naturally they're going to draw these guardians to work through, or possibly if it's like the internet effect that I talked about where all the skulls are talking to each other, it can be at different points that other essences of other skulls or other presences may come in temporarily in order to do a specific work. I see the crystal skulls acting like little mini energy vortexes that are being taken place to place to place. And then, as Bill Holman said in an interview that I did with him prior to my special experience I had in Indiana that I discussed, he said that, the Mitchell-Hedges skull may be helping other people on the planet or other situations that are not in the physical presence of the skull. In other words, it's moving and traveling to other places and things like this. So what's happening is we're going from a very simple situation where you just have a piece of crystal that's put into the shape of a human bone skull, and it's now starting to do all these amazing things and affect people in very powerful ways. So I would say most likely there's some kind of spirit presence that is coming through the door of the quartz crystal, which is related to the guardian and how the crystal skull will be used. Now, one last thing that may be a key to this would be that in our case we have 9 skulls that we take with us. Every single one has a different name and a different way that it works. And my partner Katrina is luckier than I guess, because she can hear unique voices from each skull that's coming. So it's like it's a different presence or a different intelligence. No two are doing exactly the same. Like Portal de Luz is our media skull. He sat with me when I wrote our second book, which we still haven't been able to get out in print in English. It's in Dutch, Polish, and Hungarian. And I would have thought after Indiana Jones came out that this new book would have easily been published in English, but we didn't get any offers. And to do it right, we need to have some extra finances, to edit it and do it. And I think it's going to take 2 volumes because when I did try to do it, was almost 600 pages. We were able to release it as an e-book in 2004, 2005, and people just weren't ready. Now, I know we've got the tablet wars starting tomorrow, so I think what's going to happen is, electronic books are going to become much more popular.
Yeah,
perhaps
definitely.
this book will be able to create it in a form so it could be used on the iPad or the Motorola Zoom or whatever else is going to be coming out in the future. Because I think we're now at the point where people can accept, instead of having, piles of books to read, you have one tablet and all your books are on there, just like we're doing with the MP3 players, where you can put hundreds of music songs in this little tiny, device. So to answer the person's question, I think the bottom line is we're dealing with other intelligences that are working through the doors that the quartz crystals provide into our reality to have contact with us, but they've chosen to be like a person, so we can understand them, so we can have a conversation with them, and we're not troubled in any way. Oh, this skull's saying this or that, like it's a living being.
One thing that kind of came to mind while you're talking, because of how you're saying you're witnessing changes, even in your own skulls, as time went on that weren't there before. I was wondering if you think that might attribute to some of that lensing effect seen in the Mitchell-Hedges skull, like if it's kind of like a similar thing, like that over time the crystal sort of recoheres in a certain way because of because crystals literally give off a frequency. So and can hold charge. So do you think that attributes to that at all?
No, what I think it's happening is the crystals are like ancient computers. They're absorbing and recording everything that goes on around it. Mm-hmm. So if it's recording all these frequencies and energy, then it's going to have to manifest them back in some way in a physical form. So it changes internally. But in our travels, there was 2 little small skulls a lady named Susan Isabel has in Mount Shasta. She has a spiritual center there. We were there towards the end of January, and we did a lecture and some talks, and then we went up to the mountain with her, and we did some ceremony, and the spirit of the mountain displayed some interesting things to us in the clouds. But that's how Mount Shasta is. There's amazing clouds that are around this mountain, especially for UFOs. But anyway, what I was thinking about is her 2 small skulls. She said one was found in a tree in Guatemala somewhere, and then they felt she was the guardian of the skull. And the second one, which looks the same, and actually these skulls are more like crystal faces. They're really small. They fit in the palm of your hand, and they have a face, but they're made out of quartz crystal. She said the second one, some friend gave her a granite stone or something, and she put it in the security box with the other skull, and she came back one day, and there were 2 skulls, like, a male and a female. So she did a special meditation with us, and I don't know why this happens, but when my hands hold skulls, I can still feel the essence of them in my hands. Like she placed these 2 skulls together in my left hand, and when I think about them, I can actually feel them still sitting in that hand right now. Mm-hmm. Anyway, what was remarkable with these skulls is that they visibly, you watch them, when she brings them together, they start growing, and they form a heart when the 2 skulls are put together. So this is what happens when you see crystal skulls. Is there's just strange things that go on, and you just expect it, and it's normal. And but anyway, when I first met one of these smaller skulls was in 2004 in L.A. when I had a chance to go to L.A. when we were trying to work on our feature film. We also have a feature film that involves crystal skulls, but we haven't been able yet to crack the door in Hollywood to get some interest. But we have a friend in Portland that's trying to talk to some of her contacts, and I guess Tom Shadyack's coming out with his new movie very soon this weekend called I Am. So we're trying to see if he might be open or interested to the film we have, because we already have the script done. And so we'll just have to see. So crystal skulls are keeping us busy there, Jerry. Yeah. But anyway, when I was in 2004 and I first met El Aliator, which is the name that Susan Isabel gave to the first skull, it was talking to me and it said, "You humans are very strange. We don't understand you." That's what the skull said to me. So I was kind of given the idea that this skull may not have been created here on Earth, that it may be a visitor or a gift from the extraterrestrials, and they're using it to observe what's going on here on Earth, which actually, one of the first times I saw the Mitchell-Hedges skull, I had that sensing that there was somebody looking through the skull to see what was going on around here. So it might be possible. So, yeah. But these are things that just come up when you're in the presence. So really, to your listeners, if you have a chance to meet one of the crystal skulls traveling, they should do it, because it's very difficult, to really understand them without having that experience. I mean, some people, if they listen to my stories, they might think I'm a lunatic or something, but all of these things happen. I'm not sharing any stories or anything, to try to get publicity or for people to take note of it. These are the kinds of things that are going on for people with crystal skulls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It's the whole concept, I think actually just the awareness of what just crystals bring, let alone when put into certain shapes with certain intention, even beyond this dimension, how that can factor in, and I think there's actually a good question concerning even that, how that works, one can say, into divine order. And do you feel that there is that the skulls have purpose, or at least some have a purpose, to where they'll have to be called to a certain place or together at a certain time to facilitate some kind of large event or some kind of globally recognized event or significant event or something to that extent?
Well, within the last few years, there have been several Crystal Skull conferences that have been happening. There were two last year around the 10-10-10, one in New York and one in Arizona. We also organized a conference in 2006 in Holland, in the southwestern part of Holland, and then we worked with another group in Hungary. So there are efforts for bringing Crystal Skull teachers and the Crystal Skulls themselves together, because in the early days there was a discussion about some prophecy about 13 Crystal Skulls coming together, or as was written in the Morton and Thomas book, which was the program that came out on the BBC and A&E, and I think it was either 1995 or 1996 that it was based upon. They talked about the indigenous people had a prophecy of 13 original skulls, that when they come back together, that this may be the catalytic moment that brings world peace to our planet. This is certainly possible, and I think that there have been at least one or more sets of 13 Crystal Skulls, possibly multiple sets that have worked together before. 1 plus 12 is something very important for the spiritual evolution of humanity. In Christianity, you have the Christ and the 12 apostles. In Judaism, you have the Levites, the priests, and the 12 tribes of Israel. So this 1 in 12 comes up a lot. So it wouldn't be surprising that there might be, 13 Crystal Skulls. In our first book, Mystery of the Crystal Skulls Revealed, we did discuss through this person we met in California named Michael Kent, who was talking about that there were 12 galactic races that came to the Earth. 6 stayed on the surface, 6 went into the inner surface, which is about the Hollow Earth theory. And then eventually all 12 of these races went inside, and each one brought with them a crystal skull and a crystal body that contained the entire genetic coding of their race, and the 13th skull was the family of the 12 skulls. So this does come up a lot. So the pattern that I have been observing in the last few years is through the conferences, a lot of crystal skulls are coming together, whereas we were lucky in the past to have a few come together. Now we have hundreds, because, like, for example, at the conference I was at in England in 2009, besides the skulls of the speakers, there were people who had skulls that were looking for new homes. So when you looked at all the skulls combined, there were hundreds of crystal skulls that were all coming together in the same place. So this could be an indication that part of the prophecy that there's a certain set of skulls that need to come together. But one of the things that I have to make note of is that as of this moment in time, I haven't seen any indigenous elders really traveling the world and bringing with them a crystal skull. All the crystal skulls that are traveling are working with modern people. So what that possibly means is that to the indigenous people, they consider the skulls to be extremely sacred and very important, and they're protecting them, and that there may be a special timing when the ones that they have, which they're guarding, will come out. Because after the conference, I received Portal de Luz, which there were some Mayan priests. They sent a note saying that, the buying and selling of crystal skulls should not be happening because these are sacred tools. But, of course, for objects like skulls that are being carved now and created, or even ancient ones, let's say, which need to find the right place they need to be, it's going to go through whatever system humanity has set up. So I think from a higher perspective, everything is happening in divine order. The skulls eventually find their right guardians, and that there is some things coming up in the future, like the World Peace Meditation that we did to try to bring together many people meditating with their crystal skulls, and I think there will be more of these events coming together. And one of the things that I hope, perhaps if we have more support and resources, is to, maybe even create a network of crystal skull guardians that are helping each other with different projects. and trying to take it to the next level. But definitely the message of the crystal skulls is about peace, cooperation, working together, and they are also acting as a catalyst to bring out the inner divinity within each of us, our spiritual gifts, our creative gifts. They mirror back to us who we are. So sometimes you'll sit in front of a crystal skull, and it'll help to pull out any of the blocks that are stopping you from, let's say, doing your spiritual work, having more peace and harmony in your life. It literally will start to pull it out. You'll go through a form of a cleansing, and then you'll feel like some bad stuff was taken out, and now all this good stuff that's inside of all of us, because we're all divine children of God. We all have amazing gifts and knowledge and information that's inside of us. So the crystal skulls are just one of many tools coming out now to bring that out, because the bottom line is we're going into a new age, into a golden age. Or I wrote a story about possibility of what the future might be like, and through that story what came out was something called the New Dawn. So I really believe the crystal skulls are coming out now, and so many are coming out because they are catalysts to awaken us and help us to work together for peace. And that's what I felt, is their basic purpose, and has always been their basic purpose since the first day they've been on this planet.
Yeah, definitely. And we can get into a lot more about this, I'm sure. What we usually do right now, since we're at the top of the hour, we take a quick musical break so everyone can grab a drink, get refreshed a little bit. And I still have a lot of questions of my own to get into, and I'm sure there's a lot more you can share. So we'll come back here after about, I think it's about 4 or 5 minutes here. So everyone, get comfy. Go check out Joshua's website in the meantime. If you want to give that real quick, actually, Joshua, feel free to give out your website information.
Sure. The website is located at V as in Victory J as in Joshua Enterprises, like the Starship Enterprise with an S.com. And to come to our Crystal Skull page, you do a /CS for crystalskull.html. So again, it's v-j-enterprises.com/cs.html, or all you have to do is look up Joshua Shapiro on Google, and they'll find me. I think the last time I looked, I was listed number 2, so I should be right there.
Yeah, actually, he's right up there top, and I did post that in the chat room for all of our live listeners right now, too. So, all right, everyone, get comfy. We'll see you back here in a few minutes, and have a little fun here rocking out. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us here for our second hour of Universal Truth Evolution on blogtalkradio.com. That was our little musical interlude with musician Kirk Ross doing his song Pumpkin Poem. Head on to kirkross.com for more musically goodness by Kirk there. We're here today with our guests, though, talking about some sweet crystal skulls and all the coolness that comes along with them, and bringing awareness, healing, and all kinds of other interesting experiences, to say the least. Surrounding these, as the Mayans said in our first half, these sacred tools in a sense. And I think it's interesting that we had one of our guests earlier this week, Andy Basiago, in some of his earlier interviews talk about on Mars when they would use the skull as a symbol of intelligence and as a portal or doorway to things that were sentient could tell, hey, there's something intelligent there, and that's probably shelter. And so to me, when I hear that, the carving of these of stone into skulls kind of gives them this sort of thought form and energy, it makes sense. It all correlates. So, really, actually, this kind of gets into some of the other questions I had, Joshua, concerning some of the scientific research that's been done with the skulls. I know you've been privy to some of that and experienced some of that, and I'm sure our audience would love to hear some of that information.
Sure. Well, the challenge has been related to the crystal skulls to try to work with them in a scientific way that most archaeologists and scientists have kind of like pretended they haven't existed. So what that means then is that I wouldn't say I'm not scientific in my nature, but, I don't have a background as a scientist. Mm-hmm. I have a background as in computers, which is, in a form, is a way kind of being like a scientist, because you have to be logical in order to work with computers. And, of course, I took courses in high school and college that were scientific in nature. But I wouldn't call myself a scientist. I would say I'm more of a philosopher and a researcher, but more of a paranormal researcher. But there is a lot of research that is being done from a scientific perspective related to the paranormal. And I encourage that because the two will confirm, many of these miracles and things that are manifesting. So the only type of research that we've been able to do is to ask a question: can we support the experiences that people are saying they're having with the skulls based on the energy they're receiving? So how can you do that? Well, there's one specific device we've used that works quite well. It's called a Meridian Stress Test System, and it's also called by other names. What this device does is it has an electrode connected to the machine that's able to make a measurement of the meridians in the body, especially in the hands and feet. Every meridian in your hands and feet is connected to either an organ or a system in your body, so they have it mapped out. So like, for example, if you touch a certain meridian on your hand, let's say that's connected to your heart chakra, they can see in that individual how the heart is doing, or how the organ of the heart is doing. Maybe it's not the chakra, maybe it's the actual heart organ, because it's a little bit different. Or maybe how your liver's doing, or whatever. And these devices are very accurate, because your body is not going to lie what is the condition going on inside of it. You might pretend and tell people, oh, I feel fine, I have no problem, but this machine will tell you if that's true or not. Now, in the United States, and I only know this from the work we did with a medical doctor in 2008. Unfortunately, they didn't show this on the Sci-Fi Channel. They sponsored us to work with the Mitchell-Hedges and Portal de Luz to do some tests with this machine. And so I have the results, which I have not published yet. I was hoping to publish it in our new book, so I can publish it. I'm just waiting for the right time. But anyway, just to summarize, what we're able to see through the device is the device is primarily used to do an analysis of what's going on with the person, and it also has a database where if a person has a problem, they have cures. Now, in the United States, it is forbidden to use this device other than just to do an analysis on the person. You cannot prescribe a cure with it. But the device has the ability to take some liquid, I think it has like alcohol or something in it with water, and it energizes the liquid, and the person ingests it, and it will help to balance whatever problem they might have. So the key to the machine is it has either it's built into the machine or it has a separate box where you put whatever is the substance that you want to test the person with to see what their response is. Now, the measurement is very simple. It goes from 0 to 100. If the measurement shows 50, it means that meridian is in perfect balance, because what's happening is the electrode emanates a very small current, and if 50% of that current is absorbed by that meridian in the body, then it's in perfect balance. If it's less than 50%, the person has some illness, and if it's over 50%, then it's like they're in an agitated state, or they have anxiety, or they have too much energy. Okay, so what we had to do, and this was suggested by Bill Holman, is we wanted to test a person with three things. In the test with Sci-Fi Channel, we did 4. One is called baseline. That's where the person is tested with nothing. Baseline means, how are they in their normal state without any energy, being exposed to an energy of the skull. Then we test them with a piece of quartz crystal that's the same type of crystal as the crystal skull. So, for example, Portal de Luz was tested. It would be smoky quartz. Mitchell-Hedges would be clear quartz. Me, which we tested also in 2001, that would have been an amethyst. Then we would test with the crystal skull. But in the case of the Sci-Fi Channel, we wanted to test the new skull and the ancient skull. Now, when the person is blindfolded, which is what Bill Holman said, then they don't know what are they being tested with. However, in my case, when I was tested with Portal de Luz, even if I was blindfolded, he would talk with me and said, "Hi, Dad, I'm here." And I'd say, "Shut up, I'm not supposed to know that you're there." Because, you see, the thing is, if you know that you're being tested with the crystal skull, which, of course, if you're sensitive, you probably would feel it anyway, it's going to destroy the experiment, because our mind can change everything. And they know this to be true, with scientists. Let's say a scientist has a certain theory, and he believes in that theory so much that his tests show the theory is true, but nobody else can duplicate it. Okay, only he can do it, because his mind, the power of our mind, is very powerful. So anyway, for the most part, this test worked pretty well. And the bottom line is when we introduced the crystal skulls, we saw that 90% of the readings were either the same or they were better. When we introduced a piece of quartz crystal, maybe it was like 60% or 65%. And when we worked with the Mitchell-Hedges skull, this totally followed up our experiment completely, because after a person was exposed to the Mitchell-Hedges skull, this heightened energy and balance stayed with them. So any other test you did after that, they would already be in good state. There was nothing you could do. They already got help by the ancient skull. So that's what we saw. So what this test shows is that people are being affected by the energies of the crystal skulls, and we know for a fact that the crystal skulls emanate an electromagnetic energy, which is what human beings emanate. So that electromagnetic energy interacts with the human person and can assist them. What we were seeing in another test done with a similar device in Holland is that Portal de Luz would help a person with a few of their problems, but not all of their problems. Like if it would identify 6 things which may not be in full balance, Portal de Luz would help with 2 or 3 of them. Same thing with the aura. The aura would be enhanced in certain ways. It's almost as if the skull, this is my interpretation, links into the person, knows what's going on energetically, and sends out some special energy to assist them. Because that's kind of what we see in our sessions too, the private sessions we do with our skulls, is that people are getting assistance, with aspects that are not in full balance, whether it's, emotional problem or a physical problem or some kind of psychological problem or karmic problem. They seem to link into the energy of the person, and then they know what they need to do to help them. Plus, of course, in our sessions, the person is picking which of our skulls they're going to hold, which ones that they resonate with more than another. So that was one test. Now, there's another test that we did, which was quite interesting, which is with a device called a molecular antenna. A molecular antenna is like a dowsing rod, except it has numbers on the side. And the people who work with this and use it, they're able to make specific measurements of certain frequencies of energy. And they know what the numbers are. But the other thing is that instead of two rods separating, there's a part of this device that flips when it reaches the energy. So we brought Portal de Luz to a group in Belgium, and the teacher who was helping the students with this device said, "This is a stone. You are not going to get any reading from it. This is a waste of our time." So one of the students says, "Well, let's try it anyway. It'll be good practice, whatever." So they started doing a measurement, and they came back to the teacher and they said, "We don't believe this, but this crystal skull is emanating the energy of the 5 human senses." And the teacher said, "That's impossible. Go back and do it again." So they went back and did it again, and they did it again. And every time they received energies being broadcast by Portal de Luz of the frequencies of the 5 human senses. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
Then we took Portal de Luz out into the garden of the man in the backyard. And we wanted to see, what effect would Portal de Luz have on the energy in the backyard. So there was one place they put him down, and I could feel Portal de Luz didn't like it. He didn't resonate with that spot. So I walked around until I felt there was a good spot. And they claimed that once we put him down, there was a new energy earth line that developed that wasn't there before he was put down there. So that one I'm not so sure about, but it's possible. The last thing that I would share, there's a lot of different tests we've done, but the last thing I would share for today, which was kind of interesting, is could a crystal skull affect the energy of a crop circle? That's pretty interesting. So let's see what happens there. So first we worked with a researcher in England. We were in England, and I actually saw this crop circle when I was being taken to see one of the mounds of an ancient culture that was near Avebury, I believe. And as we were at that mound, I looked across, and there in the field there was a crop circle with a yin-yang pattern. So I brought Portal de Luz there, and he told me the next time I come to a crop circle, I should bring his favorite music, which is Pachelbel's Canon in D, and meditate with him near the center. So a couple of weeks later, we had the opportunity to go to the crop circle again, and I did exactly what he instructed me to do. But first we did some measurements of the energy in the crop circle. So what we saw using, again, it's an electromagnetic reader, let's say, that the crop circle researcher had. I forget his name. First name was David, but he's passed away. So anyway, what we would do is we would go through, and every time there was some form, of this yin-yang pattern, there would be an energy. And when there was no form, where it was just blank, it would be 0. But when we went to the center of the crop circle and we did the measurement there, it was also 0. So then we thought, okay, so now let's put the crystal skull in the center and see if he can make any difference in the energy there. But he didn't. It still remained 0. Excuse me. However, what I noticed, and 2 other people who were with me noticed this as well, is when we looked into the crystal skull while it was in the center of the crop circle, I could see inside of the skull what looked like a spiral of energy, spiraling in and spiraling out. Now, if that's the case, then the energy would negate itself and the reading would be 0, because it would be going in fast and coming out fast. So the net result would be 0. Okay, so then I said, fine. So let me do the meditation then with the music. So I sat near the center of the circle. and I started meditating. I had a CD player with headphones. So as I go into the meditation in the beginning, I feel what seems to be like a cone of energy around me. And then my eyelids start fluttering very fast. There's nothing I can do about that. I just have to allow it. And about the middle part of the meditation or the song, I decide I'm going to sing with the song. And I thought for sure I was singing in perfect harmony with it. And when I came out, everybody was looking at me and said, "What song were you singing?" So in other words, I was in such a space, I must have been doing something else because, it can be like this. When you're in higher energy, you can think you're doing one thing, but on the earth level, you're doing something else. Mm-hmm. So anyway, after we finished, we said, okay, now let's put the crystal skull portal de luz in the center and see if his instruction to meditate with him is going to make any difference. And we did, and it was off the scale, the energy. And as a matter of fact, even around the crystal skull after I did the meditation, the energy was off the scale. So for whatever reason, a human being meditating with the crystal skull to music has a way of changing the frequencies of energy in the crop circle. We did one other test. A friend of mine took portal de luz, a woman. We worked with another researcher, and what he tried to do in this crop circle, which looked like an Irish knot, also in the same kind of area in the southwest of England, he was measuring what are called ley lines or the energy lines. And he found the spot where two energy lines crossed. So that's where he put this woman down. And first we tested her before she went into meditation with the skull. And then she went into meditation with the skull. Then the researcher said, I can't believe this. There's an energy line that's coming in from behind her. It just split into two pieces. And that energy line would split in two pieces and never came back for all the other people that we tested for the rest of the day. But the first lady said that while she was in meditation, she met some extraterrestrials. And they were talking to her, and they said, you humans are very strange. Here we've gone to make this wonderful and beautiful pattern for you to enjoy. And all you're doing is you're testing it to try to prove if it's real or not. So that was the message that she received. So these are some of the different tests that we've done, trying to understand how the energy connected to the crystal skulls work, but not having a way to determine what is this energy and where is it coming from.
Yeah.
Is the energy being stored in the skull, and there's an intelligence that is, deciding what energy is going to be sent at which time, or is it more of like an automatic process, like what I experienced with the Atlantean crystal ball? I don't know if you know about that one or the ball that Dr. Brown found.
No.
So, okay, well, we'll go into that in a second. So, or it's possible the crystal skulls could kind of be like programmed where, an energy comes in, and just like, on the internet, you put in a code and you get something back. It could be something like that, too. But I believe that it's intelligently driven, that somehow this intelligence knows who's sitting in front of the skull and is somehow directing what energy will be sent to offer assistance. Now, one other question somebody has asked us before is, he said, Joshua, you make it sound like, all the crystal skulls that are here, they're only here for good. There are no skulls that are like doing bad or whatever. The bottom line is this. Quartz crystal doesn't decide for itself how it's going to be used. It's a tool. So just like any other tool, it can be used in a very constructive way, or it can be used in a destructive way. There are many people who said, in the case of Atlantis, that they were misusing crystals, and that's what blew up their island. That's what destroyed their island. They were misusing the power of quartz. So I think it's the same thing with the crystal skulls. There have been some skulls, some old skulls, like when I was in Mexico, I met an old skull, and its energy was very dense and very dark, and I tried to work with it to help it, but I couldn't do that much, and I wound up getting sick. I had to rest for a day or so to do it. So sometimes that happens, but what my understanding is from all the crystal skulls that I've worked with is that their initial purpose and reason that they were given to humanity as a tool was to assist us in our spiritual evolution. But like everything else, tool is given, it's up to humanity how it uses it. It's the same thing with money. You know, there are some people out there, philanthropists, who use it for very positive purposes to help people, to make a better world. There are other people who use it for their own private gains, and they don't care, you know, what happens. So I think with crystal skulls it's the same. But I have a feeling that some of the very, very old or ancient crystal skulls, they have their own protection system. And they can, and I think if they were ever going to be, this is an idea that some people have thought about and shared, if they were ever going to be misused, where they were going to be harmful, they would self-destruct or disappear. They wouldn't allow it. But the newer skulls, you know, it's up to who the guardian is. How is it going to be used? How is it going to be worked with? Probably the same with the old skulls, because they talk about, you know, like the Mayans were doing sacrifices and they were putting the skull in the heart cavity of a person, taking the heart out. So this, to me, is not what crystal skulls were about. They're about a tool here to help and bring forward all the gifts and the spiritual aspect of who the person is inside. Now, going back to the other comment I made about this Atlantean crystal ball, in the 1960s, Jacques Cousteau was doing some excavations in underwater in South America, and had a man named Ray Brown that joined him, and he was known as Dr. Ray Brown. So after they came back from South America, they hit a really bad storm, like in the Bermuda or Bimini Island area. They had to, they couldn't fully return. They had to stop there, and they knew that when there are such storms, that it clears up what's on the bottom of the ocean. You can see it much more clearly. So Dr. Brown decided to go down to take a look. On his way down, he saw a white pulsating pyramid. So he decided, well, I don't have that much oxygen. I'm going to go into the pyramid, see what this is about. He got in there, and he just saw amazing things. And he wanted to take something back to prove that he had actually gone inside the pyramid, but everything was like nailed down, let's say. He couldn't really grab anything. He went into this one room, looked like a meeting room, a high table with chairs. And coming from the top of the pyramid was like a metal iron square beam with a ruby at the end. And there on the table was sitting were golden hands holding a crystal ball. So one story, you know, there's a lot of different versions of this, said a voice in the pyramid spoke to him and said, take the crystal ball and leave and never come back again. I have a feeling that whatever this pyramid was, it may have been there was a dimensional door opened by the storm. Maybe it was connected to the Bermuda Triangle, and so he just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and if somebody went back, maybe they would not see this pyramid. Or maybe it could be like, you know, where we started watching this TV show Fringe, where they're showing a parallel Earth, that it could have been coming from a parallel Earth that he just walked into or something. Anyway, he brought the ball out, and the ball started to do some really amazing things, powerful energy, emitting light. I heard about a meeting in Phoenix where he took it, and the medium started channeling a voice, talking about the ball, and all kinds of lights were emanated from it. So he just decided to call it the Atlantean crystal ball. After he passed away, there's another gentleman, Arthur Fanning, who has this ball, and he's now calling it an Atlantean crystal orb. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing it up is that we had an opportunity in April of 2009 to go to a spiritual center in Key West, and my idea was I wanted to experience the energy of the ball versus the crystal skulls, because they say the crystal skulls could also be linked to Atlantis, that maybe this is where they came from. So anyway, what Mr. Fanning did is, for a group of us, he did a healing session where he would take the ball and put it around your body and touch your forehead and different chakras and things. So I was able to experience the energy of the ball. And it felt to me like it wasn't a living intelligence. It was a programmed intelligence, that it would feel your energy and somehow, like a computer program, it would have, here's this energy, here's how I respond, here's what I send back. Here's this energy, here's how I respond, here's what I send back. But the most amazing thing was after he did that healing, I thought, okay, fine, I've had the experience. He came back to me, he said, open your hands, and he put the ball into my right hand. And so I did a meditation with it, and I kind of saw a picture of something for Katrina and I that's going to happen in the future, which hasn't happened yet. I kind of felt telepathically connected to her during that time. And then he took the ball away, but the essence of that ball, like I told you with those two small skulls in Mount Shasta, it stayed in my right hand. And I can, whenever I think about it, I can still feel it there. So what I've done in sessions is I've just offered my hand to people to hold, and almost everybody feels a really powerful energy there. So somehow it seemed to, its essence integrated. So that's just, again, it's an experience that just happened. Or maybe that's my gift, that I can, when I see these objects, skulls and things, I can kind of absorb their essence and then, share with other people who may never have an opportunity to see those objects. I don't know. It's just strange. Yeah. But anyway, that's a little bit about our research, and we're still interested in continuing to do research. But so far, what's happened with our research is it only comes up when we meet somebody who has time, and we can find volunteers that kind of offers us to do some type of research. We do have the World Mystery Research Center, which is a nonprofit center. We still haven't been able to figure out yet how to get some donations, because there's a lot more research that should be done with crystal skulls. And, if we could have the right equipment, have access to some of the ancient skulls, could even get some scientists that might be willing to work with us and help us, I think there's a lot more that we could learn about them. So for right now, I just have to be happy with whenever the opportunity comes up that we have the chance to do it. Really, the Sci-Fi Channel research that we did with the Meridian Stress Test System was the last test we've done since 2008.
Interesting. Then in relation to some of this research, and actually really not even so much the research, but the application, what are some of the ways that you've come across that the skulls can be used as, for healing or for readings, or for, what are some of the ways that one can use a crystal skull?
Okay, that's a good question, Jerry. The first primary use that most people are using their skulls for is meditation, of course. That they're using the skull to assist and heighten the meditation, or help them to go into, let's say, in meditation, to get answers to questions, to do healing. It was kind of funny. We worked with this medical doctor in Poland in, I think, from 2001 to 2005 or whatever. And he said, crystal skulls could become like your medicine chest, where whenever you have a problem, you just go to your crystal skull and kind of do a meditation or sleep with it, and then your problem would kind of go away, like if you had a cold or something like that. So a lot of people will use the crystal skull to feel better, if they have, some physical problem, some kind of illness or whatever. They'll use it in meditation, meditating with music, etc. Another use for the crystal skull would be to activate sacred sites. I know there's a lot of people who are drawn to different sacred sites in the world, and if they have a crystal skull, they'll take their crystal skull with, and they'll do some kind of ceremony or meditation at the actual site, and this actually can help to reactivate those sacred sites. Of course, as we talked about before, we have done a group world peace meditation on 27 days over a 2-year period, where we linked in with a lot of different people all over the world to try to send out a more loving, positive energy for the planet. So that could be another use for the crystal skull. Another person that we worked with in Poland who was an MC for a show like Sightings, and he was our translator. Whenever he would go to Krakow to do the show, he could never sleep because the noise, of the cars, because it's like that city never sleeps. He'd just never get a good rest. So he put Portal de Luz next to his head and had the most peaceful rest that he'd ever had in that city. So probably what was happening in that case is Portal de Luz was able to create a very neutral, nurturing space for him that he could just relax and fall asleep.
Mm-hmm.
Some people will use their crystal skulls while they're doing some kind of creative work. Like, for example, I said our new book, Journeys of the Crystal Skull Explorers, which we hope to have out in a printed form either this year or next. I had Portal de Luz sitting with me as I was writing, and he was kind of like assisting me how to organize this tremendous amount of information that I've collected over the years and how to put it in chapters. And, you know, it was almost like as I was writing, I think he was just setting up a really nice energy there so that I could hear. If I have guides, I'm sure I have guides that help me when I'm writing. I mean, it's just like I was hearing exactly, you know, say this, say this, say this. And, of course, there are some people who are fortunate where they channel the information. They don't really need to even be thinking. They're just repeating or typing what they're actually hearing inside of them. So, same thing with music. You know, for some people, having the crystal skull around them while they're doing music might enhance their ability to create new music or to create music on levels that they've never done before. So everybody has their own way in which they work with the crystal skulls. And this is what happens, is when a person gets one, eventually they're going to establish in some way, whether it's they hear the skull speaking to them as a separate voice, or they feel something, or they know something, whatever inner gift they're using, they will create a communication, and the skull will start to give suggestions, you know, how they can work with it, how this crystal skull can help them, how they can activate the skull. Like Portal de Luz said, Gad, I want to be in the crop circles. Who the heck knows why he wanted to be in the crop circles? But in that year, he was like in 7 or 8 crop circles in Holland and England. And he went through a lot of changes, and I think this helped him to become the skull he is. So all I would say to your listeners is if they're not a crystal skull guardian or caretaker and they decide they want to be prepared for your life to change forever. And if you don't want to be happy, or if you don't want to have more excitement, if you don't want to have your project start manifesting, you know, good stuff happening to you, if you're happy with the way your life is and you don't want changes, don't bring a crystal skull into your life. It sounds funny to say that, but it's really true. If you talk to other people, they'll all tell you the same thing.
Yeah, I can imagine so. How everyone resonates differently with different stones, and then how we're talking about the, what happens when you have, one of these stones cohere, and even how you're saying with some of your research, how the quartz, just a regular quartz versus a quartz skull, how the effect is different,
Yeah, well, that's what it's been for me. Now, of course, there are probably pieces of quartz crystal which have been used in ancient civilizations. They get buried somehow, and then eventually they find their way to a person. They can also be quite powerful. But the difference for me has been this kind of personality that you start having a relationship with through the skull. And that it's really there to assist you and help you, and then you might decide to work together to do something for humanity, some service, like what we're doing with our skulls. Now after working with them for so long, I don't always spend as much time, and maybe they're not happy with me because I don't do this, but they're really working a lot more with the people that we meet than ourselves, although Katrina does work a lot with the skulls, and she takes them out into nature in certain places they need to be. So it's like, the same thing with if you have a plant or you have a pet, you have to take care of it, and there are certain things that you have to do. So, it's not just a question of just having them and not giving attention. You have to give attention to, and, sometimes they call, and there are special meditations or things that we have to do, or they may want to go to a place. It's just an interesting life. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to be ending either. I mean, more opportunities are coming up all the time. So, like we have another TV interview tomorrow, and a couple of magazines are putting out some articles, and then we head to Holland for March for a conference and work there. So it doesn't seem to end. But we would like to try to find some ways to get more support so we could go farther with some of our larger projects, such as the feature film, and get the book in English. And also we were thinking, too, about trying to do maybe some new type of documentary for the Crystal Skull as well. Yeah. Instead of having these, production companies coming and interviewing us, wouldn't it be great if you had people who know Crystal Skulls very well kind of guiding the documentary? I think some amazing things would come out if we could do something like that.
Yeah, definitely. And, speaking of conferences, there was a question from the audience a little ways back, but it had to do with when at these conferences where you're saying a lot of the skulls are being brought together, have you noticed that there's a correlation between information relayed from the different skulls? Like, is there stuff that seems like in general seems to match or correlate with any kind of big picture or even interpersonal things?
Well, what I would say from the conferences that I've been at is that having the different teachers there with the skulls has helped people to understand them a lot better, because the people get to hear different viewpoints and different experiences. But I also think, too, that the collective energy of the crystal skulls that gather at these events also impacts and changes each person that's come in some way. In other words, they act like a catalyst maybe to open the person up or something like that. But as far as the skulls themselves, all I can say is when our crystal children, as we call them, have an opportunity to be with their other brothers and sisters, they're excited, because they are exchanging information and energy with those other skulls. So there's a lot of different things that can happen. Usually the conference is 2 or 3 days in this weekend event that can really be powerful and change people. Plus also, if you come into a conference like that and people are bringing their personal crystal or crystal skulls, they're also going to get energized from the energy at these events too, which then they can take to their home and work with them, which is the same in our private sessions, that we always recommend for people to bring personal crystal or quartz piece, or if they have a skull, so that it can absorb all the frequencies that are going on in the session.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. And in terms of energies, have you found that these? So it sounds like you're saying the skulls hold a charge one way or another. Is that? Have you witnessed that in either kind of yourself metaphysically, or is there any other research that might kind of indicate that as well?
Well, I don't know if I would call it a charge. I would call it energy, electromagnetic energy. I think if you, use any type of device and the skull has been activated by its guardian, I mean, either people are going to make comments, I feel this or whatever, or sometimes, like we come in, we do a lecture, and some people say, well, I as soon as you brought the skulls in, I immediately started to feel an energy. But as far as measuring this energy, or trying to figure out where is it coming from or how it works, this is what we really need to get more scientists involved with us, with some other type of equipment, or maybe some paranormal researchers or something, because it's the same for any kind of ancient artifact that you find. They all have an energy signature. And if you're a sensitive person, you're going to pick up on it. Some sensitives not only pick up on the energy, but they start to see the history of that artifact, which does happen with the crystal skulls when we work with sensitives. They'll start telling us about the history, like where it's been, how it was used, etc. But we really need to have scientists get more involved. And I recall when I was interviewed for the Discovery Channel show in San Francisco, the director asked me, he said, well, how are you going to feel when, scientists are going to say all this stuff you're talking about is garbage and, it's not valid or whatever? I said, that's fine. I mean, unless they're willing to do some tests to prove really, what experiences people are having is all imagination, then we can only just give the best answer that we can give for right now. We want them to feel like they're being challenged and to try to prove us wrong, because I know what's going to happen if they get involved. The skulls just do amazing things around them. I mean, sometimes equipment fails in their presence, or strange phenomena starts appearing. So I'm hopeful that one day we will get some true scientists involved in those.
Yeah, definitely. Just a general kind of question too. Have you noticed like a difference in energies or even personality, shall we say? They correlate with different types of quartz. So like amethyst versus rose quartz versus clear quartz versus smoky quartz. Is there like any attributes that you would say that the different kind might share or such, or have unique to them?
Yes, I would say that the type of quartz which the skull is made from is also a very important factor in determining, how that crystal skull is going to function and how is it going to assist people. For example, the two smoky quartz skulls that we have that I've referred to, which short names is Portal and Geronimo, they seem to be more involved in manifestation of things on a physical level, with the gray and black color being, more grounded or more of the earth. Geronimo in particular has Native American energy, so that's a very grounding earth energy. And I've seen Portal de Luz also sometimes when I'm not so grounded, just meditating with him helps me to get back into my body. He also seems to be about helping to create activities and events, having that extra boost or energy in order to be able to do it and to have clarity about what you want to create on the earth level, whereas more amethyst color would be a more spiritual color that kind of works more with the higher vibrational chakras like the third eye or the crown, connection more with spirit. Again, using the two amethyst skulls that we have, one is called Purple Starbright, seems to work more with a feminine energy, and a dolphin energy is a very soft energy. And then the other one, which has both masculine and feminine energy, which is a star being skull, meaning it's an ET-looking skull made by a Chinese carver who we don't know. I was gifted this one by the head of the English conference in 2008. His name is called the King, is the masculine name, and he seems to be linked to galactic beings and people who have an affinity for being star people, which are ETs that incarnate on the earth and forget who they are and, are here to do a mission. He works with that, and then Leilani is the feminine name, which again is a more fluid vibrational frequency that he kind of works with. But both of these are more with the higher chakras and more of a flowing and spiritual nature. And then, of course, rose quartz is going to work in the heart chakra to help open up people's heart and to be able to, to give love and receive love and to understand what love is about. And really the heart chakra is the center where the true joy is in our being. So if your heart is closed, it's like you're cutting off experiencing your life on the earth. All the good things that are here. So, but what I think the crystal skulls also help us with is about balance. This is the key, I believe, to our evolution as we go higher and higher into spirit, is that we have a lot of balance in our life, that we're honoring our masculine and feminine, and that we're also linking in between the spiritual and the physical. I sense that the crystal skulls can help a person with those balances too. So, but you are correct. The different types of quartz crystal will work with people, in different ways.
Yeah, would imagine so. I think with one of the ways I like to make the analogy of these different crystals is they're kind of like tuning into different, you can say energies, but you almost say like different channels. We might tune into whatever channel on our radio station or on Blog Talk Radio, but we might not like, or we might not appreciate this channel as much as another channel, or we might appreciate UTE more than these other ones. So, and it seems like it's kind of the same principle with these crystals being, I mean, really they're little radios in a sense. I mean, you wrap them with a wire, you send a charge to them, they're radio. And so,
exactly.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting too, like how you made the mention of how the grounding properties of these stones, and I think that talking about this subject in this sense helps to ground this subject, to let people know that you aren't crazy when you say, oh, this crystal feels a certain way, and no, you really aren't, because it literally is giving off an energy, a frequency, a vibration that you're feeling.
Right. And then Marcel Vogel, who I met one time and who had contact with various crystal skulls, he was an IBM scientist who, when he retired, he started creating all kinds of inventions using quartz crystal. He speculated that quartz has the same or similar frequency of energy as the bones in a human body. So that when a person is holding a piece of quartz, since bones are literally throughout our entire body, that piece of quartz is able to elevate the energy of that individual because it's linked to the bones.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an interesting analysis that he did, which explains why many people have a symbiotic relationship with quartz. I mean, first of all, quartz is being used in all of our modern electronics to keep an electrical current steady and to amplify it, so our devices are getting smaller and smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So, but also quartz works with the energy in a human being as well. So it's a very important stone that's really changed the planet as we know it within, I'd say, the last 60, 70 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's an important point you made about quartz being in a lot of the electronics that we're using right now, and I think that's, and kind of making the point too of earlier about the energy really in a sense kind of being stored there, and the different civilizations possibly using these, like the Atlanteans using these and such, and so when you think about as time goes on, our computers and some of our components will splinter and kind of fall away, but guess what's left there? Those hard, elements like the quartz inside all these things. And so we kind of see these remnants too, and obviously these ancient, these ancient sites. So who knows what some of these things could have been part of too, in that sense.
That's true. That's true. So.
Yeah, we're actually almost at the end of our time here, so I guess before we run out, why don't you let our listeners know where they might be able to find you online, any upcoming appearances or workshops or anything else you might want to promote here.
Okay, that'd be great, Jerry. So again, the website that we have where the major information is, and it has links like to all the other sites, is v-j-enterprises.com, and then a /cs.html, or just, again, look up Joshua Shapiro, Shapiro, on Google, and that will also link you to our websites. As far as current events that we have, we're now based in the Seattle area, so if any of your listeners are in Seattle, we have a workshop coming up next week at Friends Philosophy and Tea in Bellevue. Then we go to Holland for 2.5 weeks. So if you're in Holland, and it's possible you might be listening to this, there's a Crystal Skull Conference on March 12th, and I'll probably mispronounce the city. I think it's called Marsden, which is near Utrecht, I've been told. And then there'll be a couple other cities we'll be at, and then we'll be back in the Seattle area in the early part of April, and there's another center in Bellevue called Stargazer that we'll be at, and then we're hoping to go back up into Canada, maybe in May and June, Alberta and British Columbia, Portland. We're at April 22nd to the 26th, so we're continuing to travel, and then we should have another event taking place out in Virginia or Maryland around June 23rd, 24th. And who knows what else we'll be doing from there. If people are interested in the documentaries coming out, I believe the one by the Discovery Channel will be called The Truth about the crystal skulls, which looks like it'll be shown in June or July. And if you're in Canada, the History Channel, which we're going to be interviewed tomorrow for, is going to be something about communication with other dimensions, and our aspect of that will be the crystal skulls. Can the crystal skulls be a device for that? And then finally, we also have a free newsletter, which you'll find on the website, called The Unfolding of the Crystal Skulls, which we invite you to join. And we're kind of putting our travel information there, and information that we don't generally share just with our members. And the last thing is September 3rd to the 16th, we're going to be taking a UFO crystal skull journey to Peru. So we have that set up, and we do have a link from the main website for the itinerary. And we also have from our 2009 trip many photographs and video, so people can get a sense of what we're going to do. And our friend from Holland coming with us, Sylvia, purportedly has a Mayan crystal skull that she's going to be bringing with her. So it should be a really interesting trip. So,
very cool.
And if people just want to send an email, it's really simple, crystalskullexplorers@gmail.com. And we answer our emails really fast. So, Jerry, I want to thank you very much for having us on the show. I hope it was interesting for your listeners. And anytime you'd like us to come back, feel free to invite us. We'd love to do it.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I'm glad you enjoyed your time here. We'd love to have you back in the future. There's so much we can get into, including just your own experiences that you may want to share in the future. So, but yeah, it's been a great show. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us here for the past couple hours. And we'll see you next week. And we'll be bringing interesting information major media tends to shy away from. So until next time, catch everyone later.
Thank you.